But it is interesting. The people that are pro Trey Lance, see Brock Purdy as like standing between Trey and prosperity for Trey, and so there's so much negative. And it's funny, a buddy of mine who lives in Texas sent me a note. He's like, dude, I don't get it. Brock Purdy is one of the great stories in the NFL. I can't believe Niner fans aren't head over heels in love with what he did last year. No rookie quarterback leads their team to the NFC Championship game. He's like, that was incredible. I wish we had him here, and this and that. So he's talking glowingly. He's like, why is there so much negative for Brock Purdy? And I said, well, you just have to kind of understand there's a lot of people that bought into the narrative of Trey Lance as being the face of the franchise when they traded so much to get him, and those people simply they're invested in that, and they want to see that come to fruition one way or another. Whether Trey succeeds or fails, they want to make sure that Trey gets an opportunity. So the more we were talking about it, he said, oh, okay, I'm starting to understand a little bit better. But it is interesting when you see the Trey Lance fans talk about Brock Purdy in the comparison. It's always a referendum on arm strength because they view Trey as a bigger armed guy. And so that's their argument. Trey needs to play because of arm strength. So many people have talked about so many different stats and this and that, this shows downfield and all this stuff. Then this guy Rollins makes a video last week and he's like, well, Brock Purdy's topped out. Topped out? How could that possibly be? He's a rookie. I just asked him at minicamp or at a rookie camp or whenever we talked to him a few weeks ago. I'm like, where are you compared to last year? He's like, oh, it's night and day. I know the offense way better. And it's so obvious that he's dramatically improved on the mental side of digesting the entirety of Kyle's offense. So I think the arrow's pointing up on Brock, but that's the argument. But then when you introduce Darnold to the mix, and I thought Darnold clearly has the best arm as far as he throws the most deep balls with the greatest accuracy, in my opinion, and that I've seen in this camp. I would say he's got the biggest arm of the bunch. Then all of a sudden it's like it's a referendum then on turnovers. And then suddenly, it's like, well, yeah, but Sam turns it over. So, I mean, ultimately, I get it. I think the Trey fan just wants to see Trey out there, and he'll argue whatever he needs to argue, depending on who's standing in front of Trey or who's perceived to be standing in front of Trey. But, to me, it's like, hey, if accuracy is your thing, then Brock's probably your guy. If arm strength is your thing, then Darnold has probably got the greatest arm strength. But the Trey fans don't want to hear anything about that for sure. What do you make of that? I mean, have I crystallized that correctly, or am I misreading something? Because I don't really even see this even being a logical debate or even a debate worth having. It's just people that want Trey to start so bad that they'll come up with whatever argument they feel gets him to that result. And that's kind of where we're at. And I think if you try to make any sense of it beyond that, you're probably going to beat your head against the wall.
Yeah, and I think you're 100% right. Sorry about the train in the background, but it's that's the Lance Express going by. No, but that's exactly it. I think you look at the 49ers quarterback position, you look at the separation among the fan base, and it really is. It's the guys that are the folks who are very pro Trey Lance, and they're going to find any way that they can to knock Brock Purdy. The one that's been circulating a lot this offseason, and it continues to be the main one, is that Brock Purdy is limited. He can't. That's the main reason I think that the Trey Lance, quote Trey Lance fans, they see Brock Purdy as a limited quarterback. He doesn't have the size of Trey Lance. He doesn't have the arm strength of Trey Lance. And so he can't necessarily, what we saw in 2022, that is the best you're going to get out of Brock Purdy. Thinking that he's going to be better than that. How is he going to get better? His arm's not going to get stronger. He's not suddenly going to grow 4 inches. He's not suddenly going to, this and that. Well, forget about it. Look at what they do on the field. Look at how they go out and compete. Brock Purdy and what he did last year was, as you said, it was a great story. And he won every game that he started and finished. And when you look at his play, was it perfect? Absolutely not. It's very easy to look through his film and find plays that he didn't make and say, well, if he can just do this, and that elevates the offense. There's a couple of them in the game against the Seattle Seahawks in the playoffs where he has guys down the field and he makes a mistake of bailing out instead of holding in the pocket and taking those shots down the middle, which he can make. And so, from that standpoint, I don't know. I don't get it. They'll say that they don't believe that Brock Purdy is the guy, although he played really well. And at the same time, they'll say Trey Lance is the guy, even though we haven't seen him show it yet. We've seen one guy show something and the other guy hasn't quite yet. Trey Lance might never get the opportunity because when he has received opportunities, he hasn't been able to capitalize on them, and that's unfortunate for him. So, as far as Sam Darnold goes, I think that's right there in the same conversation. You look at Sam Darnold and his career, you look at Trey Lance and his career, you look at these two, and they are very similar players in terms of guys who were taken very high in the draft because they have traits. They've got the size, they've got the arm, they've got the movement, they've got all those things.
Scout streams. They're the scout streams. You can point to tangible things and say, "Hey, man, this guy's 6'5". Man, this guy, scouts love players that they can point to traits and say, "Yeah, he's good because of this."
Absolutely, and it also speaks to the fact that the backup quarterback is everybody's favorite guy because you can create whatever story you want for that player. He's going to be whatever you think he's going to be because you haven't seen him not do it yet, right? And that's kind of the situation here with Trey Lance too. We haven't seen enough of him to say he for sure can do it. We also haven't seen enough of him to say that he for sure can't do it. And so that dream of him becoming the guy is still there. And so one of the things for me that I would say is if you see somebody that's really pumping up Trey Lance, take a second, especially if you see it on Twitter, look at their Twitter thing, look at their banner. If they have a picture of Trey Lance in their banner, there's really no reason to argue with them because they're not going to change their mind.
Right.
And, or if it's on their YouTube thing, if they're a content creator, whatever, it's just, there's,
or if their name on Twitter is Trey Lance QB1.
Correct. So that's
a good indication.
That's the other part of it too. And, you can yell and scream about both these guys, but I think that what we know is Purdy's done a very good job, and he's had a really good supporting cast around him. Trey Lance had a really good supporting cast around him, and the one game that he did really well in what do you call it, against the Texans. He had a really good cast around him in the game against the Cardinals. They didn't do so well in that one, so you got kind of it's and then you have Chicago where it's a wet conditions, and so even though people will point to all of his good balls in that game, they'll also give him the excuses in that one as well.
I in a way, I totally get it because I am curious like them. It's like I'm invested in the Trey Lance story just like them as well. So I understand that, Trey gives you a chance to dream that the Niners in-house have the next Patrick Mahomes. And it's just he's just an opportunity away from proving it. And so I understand while there's people that are like, hey, you know what? The upside is so great. Don't move off of this guy. Give this guy a shot. I totally get that. Let me hit a couple of these chats here because I think a lot of people want to weigh in on this topic, and then we'll jump topics. Let's see. We got JG. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the other part of this too, and we can touch on this a little bit more when you're done with some of the things, was, the crazy thing that I've heard throughout this offseason, I put this on my channel a couple of days ago, is there's this desire to trade Trey Lance. And it's not just from people that don't like Trey Lance. It's from the Trey Lance people that are really pro Trey Lance too, because they don't feel like he's getting a shot. And so it's unfair to Trey. And I don't understand that narrative. If you're a 49ers fan, you don't want the 49ers to trade Trey Lance. Say what you want about him, but he is a good option for this team right now. He fits their salary cap. They've already built the team around him.
The players like him,
The players like him. Will he become, is he going to, who knows? Maybe Brock Purdy starts the season off and something happens to him, and then Trey Lance comes in, and all of a sudden Trey Lance is the guy, and he's able to prove it. We don't really know what his story is yet, I think. And that's the biggest thing is, I can sit here and I can tell you all of the things that I like about Trey Lance because he does have all those positives we talk about. I can tell you the things that are the negatives that he brings. And I always wrap it up by saying, I'm not the guy writing a story. He is, and that's one of the things people get upset with me. They feel like I don't like Trey Lance, and my thing with Lance is he's gonna prove what he is. He hasn't, I've seen him a lot more than most fans have. You too, because we're at practice and we get to see portions of practice that the fans don't. We get to see portions of training camp that the fans don't. And you start to put all of that stuff together, and that's kind of where my opinion of him comes from. And I'm not sitting here saying that Trey Lance can't get to where he's going to be the quarterback for the 49ers and take them to another level. He just hasn't shown it at this point. There's some things that he needs to improve on his game. And at this point right now, if Brock Purdy's healthy, he probably gives the 49ers a better chance of winning based on the performance that we saw last season.
What I would say to a lot of fans is, hey, you know what? There's a lot of things in life that are interactive, but this isn't one of them. So, just sit back and watch. You're not tweeting 17 times a day stats that reveal Trey's potential or Brock's limitations are not going to make Trey the starter. Trey, you said it. Trey writes his own story. He will make himself the starter by how he plays. No tweet or no, comment is going to do it. And yet based on what I've seen, there are people that are just ripping Brock Purdy, who's never lost a game that he started and finished. And it's sad because are you a 49er fan? Are you supporting the 49ers? He's done good things for the 49ers. If you're Brock Purdy and you pick up Twitter, you're probably like, what the heck? What's going on here?